Why doesn't somebody tell me what they think is going on here?
Brent Johnson, I don't know who we think we are. Back in front of the camera, second time this week. People are going to start getting expectations that they're going to be seeing us more than once a week.
Yeah, I know. And from remote locations, it's Wi-Fi's a miracle. You can go anywhere in the world now, and it's like Star Trek. You can talk to the person on the other side of the world, face to face. It's we're living the future, man.
We're living the future, but Vladimir Putin is still living in the past. The latest headline that seems like a good idea to talk about in this recording is for a little while, it was a bit of a question whether Putin was going to go to this BRICS meeting in South Africa. South Africa was starting to get a little comfortable about the idea that they might have to arrest him. And as of today, it looks like he's kind of stepped away from making that trip.
Yeah, it's funny because we had talked about it a few times that it was going to be really interesting to see how this whole, BRICS meeting takes place in South Africa later this summer. It's about 5 or 6 weeks away now. And then over the last week, I don't know if it was a couple months ago, or I don't remember exactly when it was when the, quote unquote, international arrest warrant went out for Putin, probably a year ago when Russia invaded Ukraine. But it started to kind of gain some talk that, when he visited South Africa, that international arrest warrant might be enforced. And he was pretty insistent initially that he was going to go. And I actually had no doubt that he would go. I just assumed that he would. But then over the last couple of days, it picked up a little bit more steam. And like you said, there was some rumblings that South Africa was kind of worried about it. And he said, no, I'm coming. But then today, I was scrolling through on my phone and I saw that he had decided to not go. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and you had made the comment in terms of, which is kind of your style anyways, of taking this really kind of slanted view, poke people in the eye. Hey, if this is what you think, what do you have to say about this? And so you kind of made the whole point of like, hey, if this is the organization or a group that are going to rally and take on the U.S. and both from, a military standpoint as well as an economic standpoint, but yet they can't even really organize a meeting or all show up in one place.
Well, and this is just reflective of how it's very easy to say that you're going to do all these things, but there are so many different factors at play, and it's actually incredibly difficult to actually pull it off for a number of reasons. And my whole reason for poking the bear and having fun is to really just get to people to just stop and actually just think. Don't just grab onto every headline because over maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I think we talked about how when, all of these headlines came out about this de-dollarization and this new BRICS currency, and then it died down a little bit. And now over the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's really picked up steam again as we're getting closer to this meeting. And it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago now where the Russian embassy in Kenya, tweeted out that the BRICS were going to launch a gold-backed currency at the upcoming meeting. Now, my guess is this was probably some drunk intern in Kenya that was, doing a summer project and tweeted this out. But anyway, let's pretend it wasn't. It didn't come from the Kremlin. It came from a Twitter account for the Russian embassy in Kenya. But everybody that's on board or that wants to see this BRICS currency launched immediately jumped on that. And this is official acknowledgement from the Russian government that they are going to launch this currency. And it wasn't. It was a tweet from the Russian embassy in Kenya. Now, neither one of those are known for their monetary policy acumen, right? So first of all, consider the source. And then there's been no other politician that has come out and said, we are officially going to launch this currency and make it gold-backed. Now, will they come out and launch one? I highly doubt it. Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. But again, I want people to kind of stop and think of what it would actually take to do this and how are they actually going to pull this off? And then a couple people said to me, well, the Sergei Glaziev, who is a former finance minister and, a notable person still in the government there, has proposed this on several occasions. And my comment was, well, Ron Paul used to be a congressman and he would propose this all the time, but it never really got anywhere. And so, just because a Russian politician stands up and says we should have a gold standard, and just because Ron Paul stands up and says we should have a gold standard, doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. And then again, when I sent this tweet out today about Putin, not going to or not going to South Africa now, a couple people responded and said, oh, it's not that big a deal. Well, if Biden had backed out of a G7 meeting because it was going to take place in some hostile territory where he might be absconded or whatever it was, people would have had a field day with that, right? So again, I think you got to look at things, try to look at them dispassionately and just look at them without emotion. And I think when you do that, you're going to have a much better set of analysis rather than just globbing onto every single headline that kind of suits your purpose. And I already know that people are going to hear me say this and they say, yeah, Brent, but you glob onto every dollar headline. Okay, if that's the case, that's fine. But I know that I could be wrong. I've said several times I could be wrong. I don't think I am. I haven't been proved wrong yet. If I'm proved wrong at some point, then I will officially hold up my hand and say I'm wrong. So all I want people to do is keep their open mind and think a little bit as we get closer to this BRICS date.
Now, when they talk about the various aspects of how this BRICS currency might work, one of the things that almost feels like a bit like a coping mechanism lately is, well, it's not going to be an actual currency. It's just going to be some form of trade ledger. I don't know if you've seen some of these kind of reactions or feedback to that. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is it just kind of like say it's one thing and then pretend that it's not, just so that you can, win the argument? How do you feel about, people taking these obscure looks at, well, it's a currency, but it's not a currency?
Well, to me, it's a little bit about, it's a little bit of moving the goalposts a little bit. I mean, to say they're going to settle trade, after a year and they're going to ship gold back and forth, but they're still going to use their home currencies. Okay, that's possible, but they could do that now. That's not anything really new. And to me, it's kind of like, a couple of years ago when people said the DXY will never go back above 100. And then it got to 110 and 114 last year. And they said, well, yeah, the DXY is going up versus other currencies, but it's not really gaining any purchasing power. So to me, it's a narrative change. For a while there, they were going to launch a currency. It was going to be Goldbacked and it was going to be a dollar killer. And now it's not really going to challenge the dollar. It's just a way for them to trade amongst themselves. Okay, well, we'll see how it all works out.
Yeah, well, look, it's Wednesday. We've got a couple more days. We'll see how this thing kind of gets spun in the headlines. I feel like coming up to this weekend's episode, the likelihood of us revisiting BRICS, revisiting currencies that are gold back, and some of the other things that have been bounced around this week are probably likely topics. But we appreciate you jumping in midweek to kind of have a poke at this topic that's been ongoing and kind of seems like it finally reached a head today. So thanks for checking in with us, Brent. This show is provided for entertainment and informational purposes only. It should not be relied upon as legal, business, investment, or tax advice. Neither the hosts, guests, nor any funds they may manage intends to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies.